If you've ever watched someone explain how they moved to France and like thought, okay, but that wouldn't work for me, this video is for you. I want to talk about something that it's not often spoken about, it's often implied, but very rarely is it like explained clearly. And that's being non-EU changes so much. It changes everything about the way that you move to France and how you move abroad. And when I mean non EU, so like non European, right? But I also like to add in if you're not American, you're not like Canadian, Australia, New Zealand. If your nationality or your citizenship is non EU and you require a tourist visa, like you don't even have 90 days visa free in France, if you are one of those citizens, it changes so much. It changes everything about when you move to France and how you move to France. And it changes it not just in a dramatic way and it's not like a hopeless way, right? But in a very structural, practical, and a very real way, your nationality really impacts when you move to France or how you move to France or how you move abroad. And if most advice that you've seen online, you're thinking about your move to France, if it hasn't, most of it advice doesn't like for you, it doesn't really feel like it matches you or the advice hasn't worked for you, this is usually why. In my last video, I explained that French visas are elimination based and they're not choice based. And that France isn't asking you, like, which visa do you want? But what the process is really asking you for is which visa can you justify? Like I shared that in my last video. And today I want to go a little bit deeper to the layer beneath that because who you are, let's say legally, but your nationality matters. Nationality and geopolitics, it matters just as much as like what you want to do and how you plan to design your life, unfortunately. But this is the world that we live in currently. A lot of advice completely skips this part. A lot of relocation experts, a lot of move abroad advice really ignore this part of the process. And it builds this kind of like misunderstanding that I see all the time, where people assume that if it worked for someone else, it should work for me. And what's often left unsaid is like this part. A lot of these people they're given advice, they are EU citizens or they have a lot of flexibility with their passport where they can just go there and figure it out. EU citizens and people who don't need a visa to even just enter as a tourist. They're not moving to France the same way that you would be because even just for a visit, you need a visa. And so these relocation experts, let's say, or whoever, they're exercising freedom of movement and they're not applying for like permission to enter the country in the same way. Everybody, for sure, everybody needs a visa to, like a permit to move abroad and to move to France, but it's not applied in the same way, and your nationality matters a lot. And that difference alone explains so much of the confusion that I see around people moving to France. Because being non EU, it doesn't mean harder in like a vague sense, it means more scrutiny, more documentation, more sequencing, and less flexibility to kind of like improvise later. And remember, France is not just asking, can you support yourself? It's also asking, does your presence create administrative risk? And that question is an important one that is sometimes overlooked. And I think that's why advice about moving abroad and moving to France can feel so frustrating for many people. And maybe it's the type of frustration that you're feeling in this moment. Because when you hear someone says, I moved first and figured it out, you're like, but I can't even move in the first place. I need a visa to just be a tourist. Because that kind of like thought of I move first and figure it out later often assumes EU nationality or visa free tourist travel. and the right to stay in the country while adjusting. And it also assumes like access to systems that you might not have and non-EU citizens don't have. Let's take another one. So if someone says you see travel advice, you don't need that much money, and I would say like this is valid, right? Again, it sometimes assumes like a different visa category, different proof of documents that are required, and different timing that's needed. And the advice isn't always wrong because truly, sometimes you don't need that much money. You just need to reframe it, right? But it's just that it's incomplete. You don't need that much money, but it also depends on who you are, the visa category that you can justify, and things like this. And if you're a non-EU citizen and you require just a visa to be a tourist to move to France, then pay attention. Pay attention to what I'm going to say right now. Your timing matters more. The order that you apply and the order in which you approach your move to France matters more. Mistakes are sometimes harder to undo. You can't like always switch later. You can't always apply from inside France. You can't always rely on like informal transitions when you're in France, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't move. This is what I'm trying to like. I hope I'm not being like too doom and gloom here. Just because these things are a little bit more structural, you have like a bit more restraints or constraints rather, it doesn't mean that you can't move to France. It just means that you have to be tighter on like your strategy. You have to be clearer on what you're doing and how you're doing and the order in which that you're gonna do it, right? And how you plan to move abroad. And so I want to just be kind of like clear about this perspective, right? I am a non-EU citizen and I require a visa to travel to France as a tourist. Before, I now live in France, but with my nationality, this is what it is. I'm Jamaican, so I'm non-EU, and Jamaicans don't have visa-free access to be a tourist in France. But I've navigated multiple French visas, and I now work in French HR, handling international like profiles and mobility cases depending on the projects that I'm working on. So I'm not like when I say that being a non-EU citizen changes everything, I'm not just kind of like speaking theoretically. It's because I've like have personal experience and I have professional experience and I've observed things, and also I have friends and I know people who are within this very specific non-EU category, and I've seen how small changes and differences in just your nationality can completely change your timelines, your expectations, and sometimes like your outcome. And so I just wanted to talk about it and to highlight that if you're feeling that, some of the travel advice does not apply to you, your intuition isn't failing you and you're not wrong. You're valid in your thoughts and it does matter. And sometimes it can be damaging when people plan as if those differences in kind of like nationality don't exist. And I'm not like saying like put all your woes onto oh my god my nationality. This is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like be aware of it and pay attention that it is like it does impact things and you have to be aware of it and be ready to understand how to navigate it. And it might create like me saying this might create kind of like a quiet tension, like this sort of like tension for you, right? Because you're sensing that, well, the advice just doesn't quite apply to me, or when you've seen it, you don't really know why, and you get this kind of like you freeze up a little bit, and because of that, you're just like, well, I've seen this, but I'm not really sure. Like I feel like it doesn't really fit, and so you keep researching and you keep doing these things again. This is valid and it's not because you're thinking about things wrong or you have the wrong approach. Your intuition or your understanding, your discernment of that isn't like failing you or anything. It's you picking up on a real mismatch, right? And having that like picking up on this, it doesn't really, for me, it doesn't increase fear. For me, it reduces it because it brings awareness, and it Yeah, it brings you like awareness to a blind spot that a travel advice isn't giving, that you might have missed if you had ignored your intuition, right? So for me, understanding and picking up on that mismatch really brings a lot more clarity. And when non-EU constraints are kind of like ignored, you get caught in the trap of planning unrealistic timelines. You get caught in underestimating financial requirements because, yeah, timeline is different. You underestimate how much money you're going to need. And you can end up mistakenly building your visa application that collapse under scrutiny because you're not able to justify the visa based on your life and your situation on paper through the lens of French administration of what they're looking for. And then, like, inevitably, kind of like when this happens, you end up sometimes getting a visa rejection, right? And you think, oh my God, this move, I was being too unrealistic about this whole process. Or, there's this kind of like disappointment that happens. And really, it's not like that isn't the move itself or you wanting to move was not unrealistic. It really wasn't. It's that your strategy was probably not tight enough because you ignored the fact that you are non-EU and you have these constraints that matter a little bit more than for other people. And so this is why generic advice does not work and why your nationality impacts quite a lot how you're able to move to France. And why understanding like your starting point. This is the key thing that you need to understand before so many other things. And for me, it's like one of the first steps. Understanding your legal starting point, meaning your nationality, geopolitics, that starting point matters a lot more and it matters before anything else. And so in the workshop that I'm hosting, this is kind of like one of the filters, the first filters that we apply, that I apply, right? And it's not to discourage you, but it's just to make sure that the plan that you're building can actually hold and justify the French visa that you want and your move to France. And so if you're non-EU and you have felt like the travel advice that you're seeing never quite fit you, this is usually the missing piece. Think about your nationality. I'll link the workshop description below so you can check it out. And in my next video, I'll talk about money because once this national reality, the legal reality, the national landscape of things is clear, financial clarity becomes much easier to reach. And this is what I want to talk about in the next step because I help women move to France to design the life that they love. I'm Diedre. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.